and it's something you guys might want to check into. It's the Pump Foundation, Stephen Myers. And I'm telling you, after I watched the video and had him on the show and read his book, it just changed my mind about the pyramids.
Well, the neat thing with the pyramids is if you tap into the magnetic field, you can actually pull water without a problem because you create a null field around it. And the water will be automatically pulled up.
And
the other thing that is really neat, if you take a look at the energy flow around it, is you take a look at the hieroglyphs.
Right.
Compare the layout of the hieroglyphs to each other in the same way that you look at a motherboard.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Okay.
I want to bring up real quick Kayla's point. When you're talking pyramids, there's pyramids around the world. I could see water being an issue, in the Great Pyramids in the desert, but it's also has been shown through, I won't say archives, but through, water erosion and whatnot. There was water in the desert before it became a desert, obviously.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's one pyramid we can safely say is not using for a water pump. It's actually bigger than the Pyramid of Giza, but it's somewhere, if I recall correctly, in the South Pacific Ocean. It just happens to be totally submerged.
Right.
And then, of course, you go to the odd ones, which are the step pyramids in Guatemala and what have you. Right.
Well,
but no, I got a kick out of it when it dawned on me that we were looking at circuit boards on the insides of those pyramids.
They look like it.
So did humans actually build the pyramids, or like actually build? Like, I mean, like, do the labor?
Yeah. And that being said, the answer is yes.
Okay.
They didn't design them.
Well, yeah. I kind of figured that. The one that weirds me out over there is the Sphinx, and I just read up about this a little bit. I didn't get too in-depth into it, but the fact that it doesn't actually match the story for what they tell you in Egypt.
No, because it's 10,000 years older than the pyramids are.
Yeah, and it doesn't actually match the face that they say who it is.
No. And that's even taking into consideration the fact it was defaced.
And don't forget, it was underwater too for a long period of time that they come to the conclusion.
Yeah,
exactly. And that was my point with bringing up the pyramids weren't always, or the desert wasn't always desert. Going by the Sphinx.
Yeah, it was submerged.
Mm-hmm.
Even 3,000 years ago, northern Africa, Egypt was a floodplain.
Yeah. Yeah, Egypt was a floodplain. The Sahara was a forest.
Which is, it's kind of cool. Because, Iraq, the farmers in Iraq actually still use the irrigation system. And
well, yeah, it was well designed.
It's interesting to watch because the tower that we were on in Balad overlooked a field that was completely irrigation, irrigation canals. They had dam one up. They would release the dam on another one, and they could control and regulate the water flow based on various dams. Interesting to watch. Primitive but effective.
Yes, but sometimes the primitive things work better and more efficiently than the modern ones.
They do. So moving on.
Do you gentlemen know then who created the pyramids? What race created the pyramids?
Do we know which race did?
Yeah, maybe not so specific. Yeah, maybe not so specific, but do we know approximately where these races came from that created these, and did they enslave the humans that were set forth to build them?
Enslave? No. Well, that's not entirely correct. What they did was they took over. See, the race that actually, the leaders that actually had control of it, they took over because of the fact that the Egyptians at the time were, frankly, they were faltering. It was more of a rescue mission than anything else. So, called it enslavement. When they started it, where the problem was it was a rescue mission from the off-worlders to get the Egyptian people some way of surviving where they were. It wasn't until after they left, where the pharaohs took over, that it became the nightmare that it was.
Well, Eric, can I say something? The Sphinx, from everything I've been reading recently, and I've been putting a lot of energy into it, kind of because of the wear marks on the back of the Sphinx, they have come to the conclusion that wasn't the sand, it was caused from the ocean. That puts it before mankind. So, does you guys have any thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, that's why I said the Sphinx itself was actually built about 10,000 years before the pyramids were.
So who created the Sphinx?
And if you look at it, pardon?
So who created the Sphinx?
Oh, that's the easy part. The lichen.
Okay, and that makes sense.
And for those of you that don't know, which is probably a fair chunk, they come right out of Sirius.
Okay.
And I don't mean that funny little, phone app.
No, that's the Dog Star.
Correct.
Constellation.
Yeah.
And where did they go? I know they still come and visit occasionally. But
well, they came down, they got here, realized the problem, and decided they were going to try and help. Right. So, yes, they did take over to start with, and they did have to use mankind's, the men in the local labor force. But then, let's face it, they were trying to build something for mankind.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting, too, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Capitol, the United States Capitol, if you look at all the different monuments we've got, are all centered around the Dog Star system.
Exactly.
Because we actually did a show on it, I think, 2 years ago. I think it was about 2 years ago, on how our founding fathers were actually Masons and didn't worship per se, but knew about the Dog Star system.
Yeah. Well, this is why I tell people that, yeah, everybody talks about the fact the Germans had contact with the aliens during the Second World War. What they don't talk about is so did every other major superpower.
Yeah. And that's very much lost in history. Or not discussed in history.
Well, yeah, it's probably hidden back there somewhere.
I read that there was there's a tribe somewhere in Africa, I believe, that has known about that constellation longer than modern man has.
Yeah.
Well, and not even just Africans, but there's Native American tribes that also have followed the Dog Star constellation.
There's also ones in Australia.
Yeah,
the Aborigines in the outback of Australia that know about it.
Yeah. So again, like I tell our listeners, you know what? You don't even have to listen. You don't have to believe what we talk about in S4. Do your own research. You can find the same information we do. But we've been researching this a long time.
Yeah, I just have a little problem with it. Like I told one chap, one of these days I should actually start researching this instead of living it.
Right.
This is why I pull a blank a lot of the time. When people go, "Have you read up on this?" I'm like, "No."
Right.
Like me, Reed, I don't think that's possible. Yeah.
All right.
But
so
no,
coming...
mankind has been visited for a lot longer than modern people realize.
Oh, yeah. Hands down.
Hey, Eric, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Now, isn't 3 hours better than 2 hours?
Oh, yeah. For sure. So we can talk about a lot more. Minus the political upset in the first hour.
I'm sorry. You know how I am. You should have realized that from Facebook the other day.
Oh, I know it. I know it.
Okay, can I ask one more question, quick?
Of course.
And it does have to do with a political item, but it is not a political question. I don't want it to lead there.
No.
Okay. So, last week on S-4, we talked about how Transformers and that show itself had really developed well with human history, bringing in for down.
Okay.
Does anyone else have a feeling that the whole wall thing could be something, maybe not for us only? Because that is a huge thing to build. You have to admit that. Like, that is a huge border to build a wall on.
Well, it is, and considering somewhat in Central America, it would make sense. Because what's in Central America, if it decides to go rogue, that wall won't slow it down, although, it'll slow it down a little, but not by much.
So you might want to clarify that with what you mean by what's in South America. Like, is there some race there that we...
There are some lost races that are that are still alive on this planet today that will, quite frankly, either climb over that wall or walk through it.
Walk through it is more, yeah.
I'm thinking more like something to help them.
Are you talking giants?
I'm going to say our administration is so ignorant they wouldn't. They're not here to help aliens, if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, no. But they might be fearing something, because the reality is that what mankind knows is such a small amount about what's on this planet, and that you may well be right. They may well be trying to stop more than just humans getting across the border. I don't know what they're using in the way of building material yet, but unless they're putting a magnetic core in it with a fluctuating field on it, it isn't going to slow down what's over there.
I don't think they know what they're going to build yet. They keep changing back and forth between metal.
Couldn't that be a possibility that they would be putting that in?
Possibly. That's what I mean. That's why I said I don't know what they're planning on building with it, but I do know if they don't get the magnetic field right, and it's got to be on an oscillating field, it's got to be a fluctuating field. It can't be a static one.
Okay.
Because if it's static, they'll be able to match the phase on it and walk through it.
Okay, we're getting down to the last 17 minutes of the show. Dave, you've been quiet over there. Do you have anything do you have a question to throw in?
Yeah, I've been just listening into the intriguing conversation. Thank you. It's very rare that I get the opportunity that I do to do this. So, I do appreciate that. I've talked about this many a times on Space Out Radio, and at times I don't think the public gets it. So I'm going to bring this up.
Okay.
What should be the mainstream media's role going forward in regards to the topic of ufology?
I think report the facts, for one.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. It'd be a nice change.
I would say, though, that you have to report the facts in a way that doesn't cause panic. because they have the ability to cause panic or not cause panic. There's two ways they could take that, and they have to be very delicate about the way they do it.